This is SaaS Therapy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of SaaS Therapy, the show where we help you save your most important business relationships, your customers. I'm your host, Todd Kirk. I'm joined by my ever-present co-host, Casey Trujillo, and today we are joined by a special guest, Nicolette Stepakoff, who is the VP of Change and Enablement at Eliza, and we're pumped to have you on. Nicolette, welcome to SaaS Therapy.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's get started, Nicolette. Why don't you give some background about you, your experience, where you're currently at, what you're currently doing, because I think that will set the stage for what we want to discuss today.
Yeah. So I actually started, my entire background is actually in SaaS, focused specifically on change and enablement. I actually dabbled in sales a little bit, decided that making money wasn't actually fun. I wanted to focus on enabling individuals and organizations with their tools. So that kind of pushed me into change and enablement. And I built the change and enablement practice while I was at SADA. We were focused on Google Cloud at the time. And that quickly transitioned into customer success at Okta. From there, Google came knocking. And when Google comes knocking, you don't say no. So I didn't slam the door in their face. I opened it up gladly and was there for quite some time. Again, focusing on Google Cloud solutions and making sure that folks were enabled and had everything they needed. I did dabble back in pre-sales a little bit. But as I started in that pre-sales role, our leadership quickly found that change management was a key asset to actually closing deals. And when I say that, what I mean is helping executives kind of lay the foundation of what it looks like to build applications on Google Cloud and then roll those out across an enterprise, right? What does that look like? What does the executive need to do? What teams need to be involved there? So my role shifted from actually more of a technical role into that enablement aspect, but in a pre-sales perspective. And that's when it was called Duet at the time. Duet was launched at Google and it quickly became Gemini. And we started focusing on AI. That's when I actually started seeing the biggest shift in how not only Google was operating, but how the rest of the world was going to start operating in the upcoming years. So I took a bet on myself and joined Eliza. So we solely focus on AI solutions and making sure that our customers are continuously seeing value out of the custom AI solutions and LLMs that we're deploying across their organizations.
Okay, that is super cool. You know, one of the things that you dropped a couple of things that I love to hear, which is really cool. In Casey and I's world, we spend a lot of time with people who are worried about change management, and with AI, especially, people don't really know where to start and what they want to do. But I love this fact that change management was something that was introduced as a pre-sales motion, because a lot of times it's like the sellers are coming in and they're closing deals, and then it's like, now what? And so I'm curious. I'd love to get your take on what was the decision to put such an emphasis on change management and enablement pre-sale while you were at Google, and what was the impact, if any, like good, bad, ugly? I'd love to hear that.
So the decision, it was actually more of a fluid decision than like we're going to do this, right? We started seeing my conversations naturally shift. So I would start talking to executives about Google Cloud solutions. Naturally, with my background, I was like, okay, great. So we landed on X solution. That's fabulous. How are we planning on enabling your organization to use this application? Or, how are we planning on scaling this across your organization? And from there, I think our leadership started to understand and also realize how impactful that was, because across all cloud solutions, we know that our sellers and these large tech firms, right, are really looking for consumption of their cloud tools. So like, you build an app, that's fine, but how much consumption are you getting from, the company is consuming the cloud. So if we can get your organization to adopt it and continue to use that tool or whatever you're building inside of the cloud, their consumption automatically increases. So for the shareholders, for the sellers, these are all pluses, right? Everybody's looking for that.
Yes.
Some drawbacks, though, I would say, is that change is hard, and change, no matter what you're doing, your users are going to be resistant. So I think some drawbacks to that is including it early on in the sales cycle. I always ask, like, who are going to be your change champions? Who are we going to start testing this with? Things of that nature. And automatically people start putting up their guard. They're like, whoa, you're going to roll out something else. Even if it's a champion, right? It's just natural in us. We automatically have this like change resistance lens. Even me, I'm the VP of change and enablement. And every time, my iPhone changes, I'm like, oh my God, another interface. Like, okay, great. Got to learn something new. When in reality, like they changed the bubble or like the button format to a bubble instead of like a square. But we're just, we automatically have that innate kind of resistance in us. So I would say that that's a drawback because you're introducing that earlier than if the deal was already sold and the executive's like, we're doing this, it doesn't matter.
So Nicolette, I promise this is going to get to the point here, but I'm going to go somewhere. I love Mexican food. And TK, you know why I love Mexican food? Because free chips and salsa. There's nothing better than free chips and salsa at the beginning of a meal. You just love it. You eat too much of it, then you can't finish your meal. But I love Mexican food because I always get free chips and salsa. So Nicolette, I'm going to ask you to give us a little free chips and salsa here on this podcast, okay? Right now, our audience is SaaS organizations, CSMs, customer education, customer experience, okay? The feedback they're hearing from their direct customers is they're on AI overload. The IT team is at a PepsiCo or a Progressive or even smaller organizations are saying, I have 25 AI tools to review.
Yep.
I'm trying to just get AI in the door because our executive team's freaking out about AI. How would you come in and assist? This is your expertise, is to come in here and start to lay out, okay, let's think about change. Here's some things you want to think about. I'm not asking you to give out the secret sauce, but give me a little free chips and salsa. Where would we start? How would we talk about this? How can I get some interest from my leadership? Because you even said this about Google, right? You even said that, hey, change management, they were kind of like, okay. And then you started naturally doing it. And they're like, oh man, we need to get this in the front in the sales at the start of the sales cycle.
Right.
Everybody thinks they should do it, but very few do it. So give us a little taste of what this should look like.
I would actually change that last statement before I give you my mild chips and salsa is everybody knows they should be doing change management, but it takes budget and it takes time. So a lot of the organizations that I'm working with currently are in this same boat. They're saying, I have this backlog of AI initiatives that I need to do. My executive wants this done in 3 weeks. Okay. Obviously, again, these large companies are saying like, move as fast as you can. I actually encourage my organizations to slow down and pause at that point. And here's the reason. A couple of things. We want to, one, make sure that what you're investing in is actually going to make an impact at your organization. What I'm seeing currently is a lot of folks are saying, okay, the executive says I need to build this beautiful lion with this, this awesome soft fur, and it's so nice, and it's going to be a nice lion. I'm going to cuddle with it. It's going to be great. Okay. But your actual knowledge worker, they need an elephant, and they need this elephant to stomp all over things. They need it to be rough. They need it to go in and complete XYZ and make sure their husks are the right length. And that right now is not being married together very well. And I think that is not an uncommon theme, even in SaaS, right? Like executive thinks that people need X, but people need Y. So that theme is shifting into AI. And that's where I tell everybody to slow down and pause. What we really, really need to make AI sticky in your organization, or again, if you're building something on a cloud solution, is you need to make sure that your employees or your consumers are going to actually use the tool and they actually need the solution that you're building. So to do that, we actually can come in, and what I like to do is run a quick use case discovery with our organizations. And these are actually not done with executives. I do something separate with executives. We get their use case. But with your users or your consumers, like, let's really understand their workflows. Let's understand what they need. Let's prioritize those. And then basically get a roadmap of what we can start chipping away at. And typically, again, like any normal thing, right? We start with low-hanging fruit. We get that momentum, that excitement, show people that it's actually working. Because unlike SaaS tools, if you go into an LLM and you prompt the LLM and it doesn't give you what you want, immediately you're turned off and don't want to use the tool. It doesn't matter if it's homegrown. It doesn't matter if it's Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude. They're just not going to use it. So you need to make sure that that initial experience is spot on. So we outline those and build you that roadmap, and then we'll go in and chip away on those. Eventually, what I've seen happen is we have that LLM space. People get excited, they get comfortable, and we actually start to then uncover more in-depth AI solutions that might require some API or some customization where we can actually pull in other tools into that AI work stream. So I would say that's like my mild salsa version of an answer.
You know, I like that. Have you seen the movie F1 with Brad Pitt?
I have not. My friend Nico would be very upset at me.
That's okay. No judgment here. There's a line in that movie that I really like, that I've thought a lot about ever since I saw the movie, which is slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yeah.
Right. So there's this idea that sometimes we need to slow down so we can go smooth. And if we go smooth, we'll go fast and we'll get where we want to go way faster.
Right.
So I'm curious though, because one of the things that I think is fascinating about your story and kind of how you've ended up where you are now is, in the beginning of your career, you either worked for a partner who was incentivized to sell the customer something, or you worked for a SaaS vendor who was incentivized to sell the customer something. Mm-hmm. Has your perception changed in what the customer needs now that you're more squarely in the position of supporting the customer and they're your primary? What they want is more important than what you want them to buy, if that makes sense, because they're buying the insight from you rather than the product from you. So I'm curious if that's shifted your perspective, and have you seen something that if you could go back to your old like SaaS seller CSM self and be like, if you just knew this about your customer, would you have something you would share with your past self and with other people who are in that seat today, now that you are kind of in a little bit of a different you have a different relationship with the customer today?
Yeah. I'm going to tell a story and then I'm going to answer your question. So I would say I used to have this conversation when I was at Google all the time, because I was in that weird role of like, I'm supposed to be selling you, but I'm also kind of consulting with you because I'm in change management, or walking you through down that path. But I've also been in the delivery role. So at Google, I was in this juxtaposition all the time, because as a seller, you're like, just buy, it doesn't matter, sign here. But I always had in the back of my mind, like, well, I'm not doing the best thing. Like, this is for our delivery team. It's not going to be too great. But also I have a quota. So I think that across the board, organizations can be better at selling what can actually be delivered, or bringing delivery in earlier to have those conversations. Now, your question was about what tidbits would I give myself back in the day? I think that what I would tell myself back in the day is, what you're doing and building today will ultimately impact, future Nicolette and your customers. But the landscape shifts so fast that it really doesn't matter, if that makes sense. Like, you come in one day and then all of a sudden, it happened to us, right? With AI, like, we were so focused on cloud and all this stuff. And then within a week, everybody was like, we're done with that. We're moving on. Like, those shifts are what really taught me to have clarity and be able to reframe and re-strategize at the drop of a hat. And when you're early in your career, that's a little difficult because you're working so hard at something and you're all invested in it. And then when your leadership is like, okay, we're no longer doing that, you're like, but I just spent all this time on it. Okay, we're going over here now. And I think, again, as folks enter the workforce, that's something that's just going to naturally change and happen all the time. And I think it's going to happen at a faster rate now than it did before.
So Nicolette, I'm setting you up with a kind of a softball answer, but then I want you again to give you give us some best practices here. So Microsoft, about 3 years ago, they invested, I think they created the largest customer success group out of any SaaS organization. They made every one of their CSMs go through pro-site change management.
Love it.
And so they loved everything that you're saying. They were totally bought in. And guess what? It was an epic fail. Customer success managers posted their certifications on LinkedIn. Hey, we got our change management degree, blah, 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 blah. Look at me. And then they would go in there to an organization and they wouldn't know what to do. And obviously, I think it was because they didn't really understand change management, right? They didn't understand that it's a process. It's not a one-time event, and CSMs are treating it as an event. They had multiple accounts.
They knew all the terminology, though. They knew all the terminology. They knew all the frameworks, and they knew all the acronyms. Yeah, they knew all the diagrams. They had it all figured out.
They had it all figured out. So now they've restructured. They no longer have these customer success managers. They do different roles. ProSi's never even brought up anymore, it's sad to say. And they've just basically said, hey, we're going to go back and let the partners who actually know what they're doing do it.
Yeah.
So here's my question. 2 parts. Number one, what is the benefit of one of our software organizations, one of our customers that are in SaaS that have an AI tool? Why should they reach out to you and have you assist them with that and with their customers? So setting you up with a softball there. But number 2, how much of change management should a SaaS organization know, so a CSM, when working with their customer? Because if they know too much, they're going to overwhelm the customer, and the CSM doesn't have time to actually see it all the way through. That's why they're going to partner with a partner, right?
Right.
So
or they overpromise a bunch of stuff to the customer that they can't actually execute, too.
Yeah, exactly. So should CSM just stick with, hey, there's 2 things. We want to do awareness, and we want to go back and do reinforcement out of the ADKAR model. Is it the change triangle? And hey, we want to make sure that we got executive buy-in. And so, the tech, the people, and the processes are all. So 2 answers. 1, why should they go with a partner? Number 2, how much should a CSM understand about change that they could actually utilize with their POCs? So I know it's a hard one. I'm giving you some time to think. I'm still rambling because, we always tell our guests, we just want to have a conversation like we're sitting at a Starbucks and we're just talking about life and we're just giving our thoughts. So what do you think, Nicolette? Number 1, why a partner? Number 2, how much should a CSM know? So they're dangerous, but they're not hurting anybody.
Yeah. They're both valid questions. I would say coming from like a large enterprise and then going back to kind of the partner world. So, when you're working with these large companies, like you said, they often say like, we can do this, no problem. We can, and they can, but here's the thing, like they are also tied to numbers. They're also tied to their shareholders, and they have to deliver to their shareholders, to their board. So yes, they can, but ultimately their bandwidth and the number of employees that they have, even though, on paper, it looks amazing how many employees they have, they are unable to deliver the depth that you need. So I used to see this a lot when I was at Google. We would say, yes, absolutely. I would build these change programs. I would put them on our partner website, right? The partners would go in and download them. The good partners would notice that they're literally like an inch deep on the change management line. Because what I could deliver at Google was that. And then I would have to move on to the next thing. Whereas your partner could come in and they could take that initial framework or that skeleton, and they could really then build it out into a full-fledged change program. So really what the skeleton is doing is saying, here's our framework. Here's the Google agreed upon methodology. Take this and make it your own, test and iterate. So my top partners at Google would do that, and the content that they would develop was unreal compared to what Google would be able to deliver. Right? And sometimes they would come back and be like, let's collaborate on this together, blah, blah, blah. And that's fabulous. So I think that answers your question, both questions, right? So going from an enterprise and why partner with someone, well, if you were to reach out to Eliza, we have all of OpenAI's content. We've looked through it. I've seen it. Again, it's the same concept. Like, they give you the baseline. It's very self-service. They say, here, go do this. Here's your program. But if you work with a company like Eliza, we literally walk you through step by step. Let's talk to your executive. Let's get that vision statement, that why statement. Let's get who are going to be your resistors? Do you have those identified? Do you not have those identified? Do you have a change team, right? Some organizations are like, yeah, we have a set of trainers. Great. That's awesome, because we could scale that more. Let's do train the trainer sessions. Let's get you that customized content to kind of make that repeatable, instead of you kind of going through that baseline change and enablement offering that some of these large organizations have put together and made public to you.
Yeah, it's interesting. Having seen a lot of partners in the partner space, I think it's interesting to see how partnerships are perceived across different SaaS companies.
Yeah.
And some partners have this like terrible reputation of like never coming prepared to customers. They don't really have their stuff together. They come up with programs that I don't like as my SaaS person, or they undercut the thing I'm trying to sell to the customer. And so what would you say, where have you seen because basically I love your answer, which is basically like, hey, a partner can go deeper than the SaaS company can.
Right.
And the thing that the SaaS company needs to know is what are the baseline things that then set up the partner to be successful, so that, because that's going to give the customer a really good experience. What would you say, how do you develop that healthy relationship between SaaS vendor and customer? Or SaaS vendor and partner? Because sometimes it can be a little toxic, right? The SaaS vendor is like, I hate this partner. I can't believe I brought them in to begin with. And it can get really bad if they're not seeing eye to eye.
Yeah.
What have you seen that makes it work really well when you bring in somebody like Eliza with OpenAI or with Gemini? And how do you make sure that relationship is a healthy and positive one for the customer?
Yeah. So, okay, a couple of things. I'm going to be very candid with you. I am a huge fan of talking on the phone. I'm a huge fan of meeting people in person. I think that those two things are extremely difficult for people today. We're always on Zoom, right? Your sellers are traveling, and that's fine, but they're too busy to meet with myself, who's a delivery person, leading my program in person. So instead, I literally will pick up the phone and call people, even if it's for 2 seconds. And that helps build that interpersonal relationship and rapport. If I know my rep is going to be in Austin, Texas, and I have a customer in Austin, Texas, well, guess what? Like, let's schedule my meeting around when I know my rep is going to be there. So I can be like, hey, I know you're going to be here. I'm also going to be there. Let's meet for coffee really fast. Right? So those are little interpersonal things that I think are dying out because everybody's, one, moving so fast, and two, everything's remote these days that we don't have the ability to just, go and sit down with someone really fast or have that kind of water cooler talk. If you're allowed to, as a partner, I would also encourage you to go out and literally sit in their office. So when I was at SADA, I literally would book a conference room at Microsoft when I was selling, it was BPOS in those days. When I was selling BPOS, I would literally book a conference room at the Microsoft Playa Vista office, and I would sit in that conference room and I would just walk the halls. I would meet people, even if they didn't have anything to do with what I was selling or what I was doing. Right now, you know my name. So if it was brought up for some reason in a meeting or other contacts, you'd be like, oh yeah, I know her. She's great. Oh, she comes here every Thursday. Right. So I think that is key in building that relationship. You also have to get that representative or that team to buy into your vision and what you are trying to do with their customers. And I wouldn't just like present your methodology to them, right? I would present it in a way of like how it impacts their how they get paid out. Right? So going back to the consumption conversation we had earlier today, like if you sign up with Eliza and you have us have those conversations about change, your consumption, we could tell you your consumption is going to increase by 25% quarter over quarter. Even if it's 3%, that's 3% consumption they didn't have for that bucket. So if you put it in a seller's frame, that is always going to be key because that's what they care about. They care about money. They care about keeping or hitting their quota, even leadership. Leadership cares about that too. So framing it in a way that is going to positively impact them and their goals and what their KPIs are, that's how I would go in having those conversations. Thank
you, Nicolette. I love that. So you made a comment earlier at the beginning of this conversation where, what an executive might want in their strategic plans in utilizing AI sometimes can be different than what the actual employees at the organization are looking for. You talked about having some stakeholder interviews and then, trying to find use cases from the actual end users. Again, just always looking for some free chips and salsa. How do you get out of the end user, the use case? Because right now I'm worried that if I share too much with you, you're going to take my job. We're going to have layoffs. I'm not all the way sold in these agentic workflows because agentic workflows mean I am the workflow headed out. So how do you get sincere, honest feedback? Are you meeting just with managers? Are you actually trying to get to the actual employees themselves? Mm-hmm. What are some best practices and how you're trying to dry out some of those use cases?
Okay, so I think your first step here is, we are in the first inning of AI. And I actually had this conversation with my mom the other day because Amazon and Google a couple weeks ago, I'm sure you've noticed, went through a whole bunch of layoffs. Immediately, I know a lot of people at Amazon and Google. They're in my network. I'm friends with them. I was like, oh man, reaching out to everybody. Are you okay? All this stuff. My mom walks into my house. I have dinner with her every Tuesday. She was like, it's because AI. AI's taking jobs. I'm like, whoa. Slow down. Let's rehash this, right? So I would say to any employee that is currently in a position, a couple of things that you should be thinking about because we're in the first inning. And I'm going to tell a story and then I'll get to my point here. But in the 1800s, photography was introduced. Okay. Artists were up in arms about photography. They're like, we're done. Art's dead. But in reality, a new genre of art was released. It was called Impressionism. So what artists did was they shifted how they were painting. They now have tone, they have style, they have depth in their art. And I would encourage every employee today to shift the way that they're working. There are going to be some workflows that are taken over by AI. What you need to do is sit down and you need to make an inventory of the workflows that can be taken over by AI. And you need to show your management and your leadership that you are going down that path and you are producing X amount more because of this new AI tool that you have. If you show you're on board, you are going to be safer than the people who are like, I am not doing this. I need to keep my job. Let me tell you, your time will fill up with other tasks that currently cannot be filled with AI or accomplished with AI. Humans will also always need to be in the loop. We're not at a place right now where I could just build a workflow in Claude or put something into ChatGPT and say go, and it is perfect. You always are going to have to revise it. You're always going to have to iterate, and that's what human in the loop is. There's also, I don't know, I forgot what study it was, but recently, maybe it was Tesla, I don't remember. They built a robot, and it was a house chores robot. Everybody was so excited about this robot. Do you guys know how long it took the robot to take the trash out? It took 4 hours to take the trash out. That's like asking my husband to take the trash out, okay? I already have a husband. I don't need a robot to do it. So we can't even get a robot to take the trash out. It's not there yet where it's going to replace your entire job. It is going to make your job easier and replace some workflows, but you as the individual, your job is still there. Okay. And if you have a good executive sponsor, your executive sponsor should be saying that. Your executive sponsor should be saying, look, AI is here. kind of like the Shopify announcement that Todd put out. You remember that, where he was like, it's here, we're doing it, get on board or get out. Right. And that's where I think that strong executive sponsorship comes into play, because if you can show that you're aligned with leadership and that you're taking these tools seriously, most of the time what I see is if a job is fully automated with AI, but you have shown to impact that or improve that workflow or help build that AI solution, even if it's just by providing like eval feedback, they will most likely find a different place for you where they'll align your skills, et cetera. Now that's also on the individual to say, like, here's what I want to be doing and create that plan, right? You can't leave that part out, but there's always other paths when that comes up. Did that answer both of your questions?
I think so. Nicolette, one of the things that I'm curious about, based off of, there's so much good nuggets there, right? And people are hesitant around AI. They're trying to figure out the right way to go. Partly because they're also hearing this mixed bag, right? There's a lot of news around, AI it's not just like it's going to take over and it's scary, but it's also like AI, it's going to take you way longer to do what you want. And if the whole point is for me to be more productive and more successful, but I look at the adoption is actually going to make me more slow at my job or less effective at my job, then people are hesitant in that regard. So this is not a two-parter. Casey's really good at the two-parters. That was just a tee up. That was just a tee up for my one question, which is, have you noticed when you think about the different audiences, different industries, different user bases, where have people had the most struggle and the most resistance versus those who are more apt to jump on board? Meaning, like, are you noticing any trends as you work with different organizations where there's some sort of a corollary that you're seeing between role or industry or anything like that, where it seems to be a little bit harder for people to jump on board?
I would say middle management is becoming more and more of the resistant layer as you're rolling out AI tools, even if, again, it's just a simple LLM, right? And realistically, it's not their fault. They're literally the carrier pigeon. Like they don't have control over anything that happened. They're just telling their employees. So when I talk to my executives across industry, it's the conversation of, who are your managers? How are we going to get them on board? Maybe it's having a couple of them on the AI governance committee. Maybe it's giving them certain KPIs to hit or some incentive to help them uncover use cases, deploy things inside of their inside of their departments or functions, and helping us roll those out. That again, that middle management layer it's a tricky one, because either there's no gray area there. Either they're on board or they're not. And that, again, is always going back to executive sponsorship and making sure that they are able to address those resistors head on. And not in a bad way head on, but be able to have those conversations with them. You need that active and visible executive sponsor, because if I don't see that executive sponsor taking ownership and actually addressing resistance, you're not telling me as an individual employee that this is important enough for me to focus on either.
Right. Nicolette, this has been awesome. We have loved every second, and you have filled my plate with the chips and salsa. Thank you so much. At the end of every SaaS therapy, Todd and I always ask the same questions to our guests. It's therapy, and if you've ever gone to a therapy session, a good therapist always says, hey, this is something we're going to work on. And then the next time I come and meet with them, they ask me how I did. So, Nicolette, if you could give our audience one homework assignment for them to go do, what would be your homework assignment?
I would start listing out. I would start making your inventory list. Start making an inventory list of workflows and things that you think you can start automating. And there's matrices online that'll walk you through, like, if it's high priority, easy, hard, all that fun stuff. I would start inventorying those workflows. And then I would start taking those. And if you have an AI tool inside of your organization, You could literally prompt ChatGPT or Gemini or these other solutions to say, I need you to help me make an inventory of my workflows and then help me identify which ones you can start helping me automate. And I need you to prioritize those for me. It'll literally give you a list and then just start having that conversation. Once you've identified, let's say 2, then ask, help me build this. How would I build this? Is it a ChatGPT task? Is it a Gemini gem? Is it a Claude workflow? If you don't have that solution within your organization, because we all need to stay safe and secure, that's okay. Try to build it within the solution that you have. We don't want to create shadow IT for anybody, so don't use something that's not approved. But that's what I would start doing, because you want to start going down that path. We are in such a juxtaposition right now where either you know AI and you can use it really well, or you don't know it at all. Start moving towards that I can use this for my job bucket. Those are the people that are going to stay employed.
Yep, I love it. I don't know if you've ever heard of the trans-theoretical model of change, but I always love the idea of moving from pre-contemplation to contemplation. Yeah. Start contemplating what you could do.
Yep.
Right. And the best way to do that is to think through, what do you do? What's the workflow today? And how can you do that different? It's great advice. I love it, Nicolette. Okay. So if people want to follow you, find you, what's the best way for them to come in contact with you?
Love that. LinkedIn is the best. You can also reach out to me, I think, via email. If you want to do that, or shoot me out a LinkedIn message, and we can have a further conversation.
If you want, we can put your email in the description of this episode.
Yeah, so. Go for it.
Okay, good deal. Well, Nicolette, thanks so much again for joining us. And for those of you who are here with us, remember, we're here every week. Come back on Wednesdays usually to come and listen to us and our guests. We hope you join us for the rest of this year. And everybody, go have a great rest of your week. Thanks again, Nicolette.
Thanks, everybody.
SaaS Therapy is brought to you by Brainstorm, the SaaS platform for SaaS adoption. Learn more at brainstorminc.com.